Backfire.com, your Republican candidate for governor.
Have sexual relations
and
with
I realized that this is something he is
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Good morning. You are listening to 99.9 Backfire. Steve Hickson is gone. He's out fishing. In his place is the intelligent, handsome, always humble Daniel Brantley. And we are being filmed in front of a live studio audience today. Daniel Brantley. Thank you. No. Thank you. Well, Steve's gone. We got John and Franklin here. Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
And I just got a news tip. I don't know if you guys have heard about this. Apparently there's signs going up that say recall Gary Davis.
Apparently somebody posted a bunch of stuff uptown wanting to know why there was it would cost $20 a month to monitor the alarm, which apparently the alarms are not monitored in the courthouse. And comparing the $20, of course, to what it's going to cost to fix all of this.
It'll be expensive. Mayor Davis himself says the courthouse fire cleanup cost, quote, huge. How would Donald Trump say that? Huge. Y-U-G-E. Huge. Yeah. It's going to be huge.
Well, it is going to be that. I do understand they're making some, taking advantage of the opportunity, I guess is a bad way of putting it, but they are going to put LED lighting in and new wiring and so forth. Much of what was there, I think, was from the origin in the early 1960s. So maybe we'll end up with a better facility at least.
Well, I mean, you would have to wonder if you've got an alarm system and it's in a building that's unoccupied in the evenings and unoccupied on the weekends, wouldn't you think monitoring that might be a good idea?
Seems like a reasonable question.
Yes.
And by the way, what caused the fire? I know we've had an investigation, or maybe an investigation is still ongoing, but it's been like a news blackout on this.
If we have anybody listening who knows the cause of the fire, 614-5553, we'd love to hear from you. And according to this article in the Banner, the Tuesday before the fire, Mayor Davis had actually signed a contract to replace the HVAC, lights, and windows and remodel the restrooms. So
now we'll get insurance money to do all of that. I hate to say lucky, but wow.
You didn't sound like you really hated to say that. Well, after they've got the new workhouse, new Lake Forest school off the ground, the mayor says the courthouse came back to being a priority. And they're going to pay for it with energy savings. It'll pay for itself kind of thing, I guess.
I guess you'll pay for it with insurance money now.
They also received some sort of grant for the lighting improvements.
Okay. Very good. Yeah, they had planned on fixing it up, and I guess this kind of extreme fast-tracked it.
I would imagine so, yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know if you guys heard about, I'm sure you have, the racial slurs found on an apartment door.
No, I didn't hear about that. What is that?
The story came out in the Banner Wednesday. I think it happened Tuesday night. Oh, we have got a call. This is a new thing. All right, just a second, caller. We're figuring out how to push the button.
Since we've forgotten, we don't do it, so.
All right, you're live.
Good morning, Daniel and John and Franklin.
Good morning.
Morning.
I haven't talked to you guys in a while.
What's up, Bullet?
I just heard a little bit about it. I wasn't there. I don't know if anybody would ever know what caused it, but I heard it was kind of electrical fire. The wires are bad. My wires might cause it, but that's just like a house fire. Sometimes you can have a bad wiring. That's what I heard what caused it. So the wiring or something. I don't know what could have caused that, but that's just what I've heard.
That's what we heard was their initial thoughts on it. We didn't know if there's an official statement on it.
I hadn't heard about that, but I know some houses around here in Cleveland have burnt down because of faulty wiring, but I don't know if we'll ever know what caused it or not. But I think it should be ready to move back into, about 6 or 8 months?
I think they said at least that, yeah.
Well, guys, I heard you this morning talking. I thought I'd call in and talk to you a little bit here. And
It's good to hear from you. We thought you had found a better class of friends.
no, like I said, I've been needing my sleep here lately because I've been having some problems with my mouth, teeth, and stuff. And I need to get over to John's and let him straighten me out. But I keep on. I'm just ready to go to the dentist.
Well, that's pretty common. We're not exactly anybody's top priority.
Well, don't go on a Wednesday. His hands get a little shaky.
That's not true.
No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, I'm gonna take your advice on that. I'm gonna go on a day besides Wednesday.
I might be more fired up, more on the ball on Wednesday.
Okay, guys, good talking to you.
Thank you, Will.
Thanks for calling.
Well, we certainly have some wires crossed at this station and some problems with our mouths.
You have a alarm system that's monitored?
No. Well, I guess.
Yeah, I bet you do. I bet you do.
Well, hey, yes. So these racial slurs, they were aimed at African American folks, and it told them to get out.
This is in Cleveland?
This is in Cleveland, and the other one said, "You will die." You can see.
There was a picture in the paper also.
Oh, was there a picture? I didn't see the picture.
Yeah.
Very aggressive, and we talk about racism being gone before Obama, and has racism ever been gone?
No.
No, it never will. Hopefully we can keep it unacceptable.
Yeah, agreed. And so there is a reward. If anyone knows anything about this, is there a phone number at the bottom of that article to call in?
I did not see it.
Okay. I would guess you could call the local, the police station if you know anything. That would be the right thing to do. Cut some of that out because we need to love people in Cleveland, Tennessee. Well, Fivus updated Main Street on downtown strategies. John's going to be excited about these. Now this is people talking about stuff in Fivus, but there's a need for more, better parking in the city. Traffic concerns on Inman, a proposal for a downtown water park.
A what?
Oh, gosh, I wonder why that didn't get talked about before the 46-cent tax increase. Maybe we can go into the water park business, too.
It just says there was a proposal for a water park in downtown Cleveland.
Government-owned?
It doesn't say that. Why not? We're
going into the apartment business, I guess.
We're not going in the apartment business. We're going into flipping houses.
Oh, okay.
But he's saying there's a need for more retail businesses, more entertainment, more residential possibilities, and beautification.
Well, look, I want a Margaritaville. Why didn't the city just build Jimmy Buffett a Margaritaville in downtown Cleveland? I mean, let's don't bother with little things like, is it economically feasible? Let's just spend taxpayer dollars on it.
I'm gonna hope that article was a mischaracterization of.
I'm gonna bet it was
something like a park with a water feature in it, as opposed to a water park.
That might be true. It could be talking about
I have a feeling that was actually what they were talking about. Because there has been a discussion. It's in the process still down at the Taylor Springs area down there, and I understood that was supposed to have some feature that displays the running spring there. That's still active. Gotcha. Where the community was founded.
Yes.
So maybe that's what they were discussing.
If there's anyone who knows for sure what this water park is, if there will be 40-story high slides and tubes and stuff, let us know. 614-5553.
I think that's the plan for Johnston Park. They've been trying to figure out what to do with that. I think
they're
going
to have the slides come out of the hotel.
I think what's going to happen is it's going to shoot you right straight into Franklin's law office where you can sue the city for your damages.
Now. All right, so speaking of, the sheriff's office was supposed to do some auctioning of vehicles. Are you guys aware of what's happened with this?
No, I missed that one.
This is a new one.
Man, how am I getting all these things? Let's see, this came out. Oh, this is this morning. Okay. I guess yesterday in the banner. They're going to
your wife runs you out of the house too early.
No, I got it. Usually I'm doing research for Steve. This morning I was doing research for me. Okay. The sheriff was going to auction off some vehicles, but they were put on hold in August at the request of Commissioner Rawls. And Commissioner Rawls, if you want to call and give us clarification, if the banner missed it, that's fine. 614-5553. Thompson wanted them to be auctioned, but Dan Rawls said, no, let's wait till we get our questions answered. Now, Dan actually went to investigate these vehicles a while ago. No one was there to meet him, and that the information given on the vehicles was incorrect when he went to look at them, that it didn't match up to what he was told. There's a boat there. Why? I guess they buy stuff and sell it, though. Why they would have a boat, I don't quite get.
No, I mean, things get, like, for example, if you get, Franklin and I, we've talked about this, whether it's right or wrong, but these confiscation orders, if you're pulling a boat and you get stopped and they decide to confiscate your car, they confiscate the boat too.
That's right. Well, supposedly a boat had a transom rotted out, but there's nothing wrong with the transom, Rawls says. I've been around boats all my life. My dad raced them. So it's just an interesting thing there that, a lot of people want to say that Dan Rawls is out to get the sheriff. And then there are people who say Dan Rawls is out to get the truth. Either way, it looks like there's some questions about the vehicle here.
So how'd that story get generated, though?
This was during a commission meeting.
So this is a report from a committee?
Yeah.
Commission. Okay.
Yeah. Voting session.
By the way, where's the commission meeting now? At the school board?
Where is I'm not sure.
I think that's where the last one was. I don't know if it's a permanent one or not.
I know they had a nice story on Donna Allie Simpson moving into new digs, and people have been very generous to help the county with
they have
their functions.
The clerk and master's office is now in the second floor of the Andrew Johnson Bank down there.
And I believe Jones Management actually helped with Donna. So
the former FSG Bank down there, I think, is where they moved. So people are pitching in the way it should be.
Yeah.
Which is
good thing for the community.
When we talk about small towns sometime, and we're kind of moving out of the small town, at least numbers wise, but it's nice to still see us sort of function like a small town.
Yeah, and we would like to open our doors to the county commission meetings if they'd ever like to have them.
Right down here.
Yeah, I think that would be exciting.
Be exciting. We don't have enough microphones for them.
We could figure something out. If they wanted to do it, we would find a way.
We cram them all in this room.
I think that could be really good because, there are, we think about, we kind of get on to the city and stuff because their meetings are timed in the middle of the day where it's very difficult. But also, if you can't get out of your house for one reason or another, if you're shut in for some reason, I think it would be beneficial if they get out.
I'll tell you what would be just as easy, actually, and not very costly. They could stream those meetings live.
That's true. That'd be very easy.
Yeah, here's your problem
technology
with that. They could put the checkbook online, which people have asked them to do for years now, and they just won't. And I wonder why.
Both of those would be easy.
Well, yeah, they're easy.
I bet one of them's already online, just not accessible.
Which leads you to the conclusion of why do you not want the public to have access to these things?
I don't know. But the one thing the public does have access to is the fact that the SPCA board removed its president.
I heard that.
It looked like a pretty ugly meeting. The president was Tim Waldrop, who was appointed, by Mayor Davis. And then the people on the board appointed him as president.
Well, no.
Okay, maybe I misread
That's not quite right. I mean, the board has to select their president. There are members of the county commission on the board.
All right. Well,
is that a paid position or a volunteer position?
The SPCA president?
Yeah.
I think it's volunteer.
I would think so, too.
It's an all-volunteer board, with the exception of the two county commissioners who sit on it.
So there's not a paid director?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't know, but they asked him to resign. He wouldn't. And then he mentioned that they violated the Sunshine Law when they asked everyone to leave a meeting.
Well, they mentioned that he had violated it.
Oh, Haney responded. That's right. Haney is the board member. And it's very interesting. And then, yeah, it got dirty, and Waldrop is threatening to sue over this.
All right, Franklin, you're the legal expert. If it's that's one of the reasons I asked if it was a paid position. If it's an unpaid position, what exactly do you sue for?
I don't know that he has any right to sue anybody for anything.
Okay. I mean, I'm just thinking, well, it's not a job.
That quote was not from an attorney. It was just from somebody upset
Personal
about being
opinion.
removed from a board.
Yes.
Okay.
I think there was a quote from Commissioner Rawls in it afterwards saying, I don't think there'll be any lawsuits. Feelings were just ruffled or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not, look, I always preface by saying I love animals. I've got all kinds of pets, probably have more pets than the average person has.
But you've eaten most of them through the years.
I do hunt and eat animals too, which, by the way, hunters are actually probably the best conservationists because we understand how nature works. But my point, though, is, man, you talk about an issue that gets more attention and more passion.
Bizarre.
It's the animals. You know, we got people starving in Cleveland, Tennessee. We've got homeless in Cleveland, Tennessee. But we sure do get hot about our animals. And I'm not knocking that, but maybe we should be hot about some human issues too.
Well, what's the longest period of time that the SPCA has been out of the news?
It's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, this
Okay.
is the last little bit,
year and
probably.
a half or so.
Last year and a half or so.
And this, there's no actual controversy in that story other
No.
than they removed the director.
But what I mean
it was
is,
the board of the SPCA who
That
removed its
removed
own
it,
doing
director.
their
So
job.
there's nothing particularly controversial about that.
Very good.
Boards are supposed to exercise oversight of some sort. I don't know what the issue was here, but that didn't strike me as unusual.
no,
Very good.
that's true.
I don't think any other organization had that series of events happen would have gotten as much attention with the story.
True. Yeah.
Well, then
Yeah,
why is
because of
that?
their history.
Is that the banner or the?
Well,
It may be
the
their
story
history.
referenced that a previous board meeting had violated the Sunshine Law, and so it appears that the media was present for this board meeting.
Well, by the way, as I understand, like on the Sunshine Law, if you have regular meetings and they are at regular scheduled times and in a designated location, that's not a violation of the Sunshine Law. If the press doesn't come, that's not your problem.
I understand the allegation was that
It's when they close the
they
meeting.
closed a meeting and
But it may
essentially-
also be a moot point. If the press wasn't at the meeting anyway,
Well.
then it's a moot point.
Yeah. But if there was general public there, which I don't know
well,
what general
not
public
exactly. If there were two county commissioners present at it, exercising their roles as county commissioners on that board, and the meeting was closed at that point, that does violate the Sunshine Law.
But who was it closed to? Everybody but the two of them, or that?
I understood that certain members of the board went
there.
into a session privately and excluded other members of the board even.
Well, that's what I understood too. But my point is, the Sunshine Law is actually somewhat subjective, and it's hard. Like, for example, if there were other members of the public, which those board members would have been considered, that'll probably be the argument: is it's not a violation of the Sunshine Law. But Sunshine. That's another really funny thing about that. When we had the Tennessee Waltz, it was the state legislature that screwed up. It was the state legislature that was involved in a bribery and pay-to-play scheme. Well, then they passed this ethics regulations that applied to the county commissions and county government, not to the legislature.
Makes sense.
So they're the ones that caused the problem, and then the fix wasn't on them. The fix was on county commissions. And I will be honest, the idea that two county commissioners can't talk is actually somewhat stifling in some ways. I understand what they're trying to do, and I generally support it. But it also makes, like, most of these boards have two commissioners appointed to the board. Well, you have to be really careful in that board meeting, as we're discussing here, that you don't end up violating the Sunshine Law, even though there's supposed to be two members on that.
So even inside that meeting, they have to be careful.
Yeah, it gets into what did you discuss, and, was the meeting a known meeting, or was it a called meeting? Did you notify the press? Well, do you have to notify the press if it's a regular meeting? It actually gets difficult for commissioners not to violate the Sunshine Law.
Well, speaking of legislators, tours, Kevin Brooks was named Legislator of the Year by the Tennessee chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. What does that mean? Congratulations, Kevin.
That means that the pediatricians in the state of Tennessee appreciate Kevin's leadership and support.
Bada bing. And we do too. It's hard not to love Kevin Brooks. That's why nobody runs against him. Charleston leaders went in the Walker loop, obviously. They said that the explosions that happened weren't any worse than anything that happened at Olin. The only difference was they knew what was happening at Olin in the past when they had problems, so they could communicate that to the community when people call them.
I thought you were talking about the Greenway. I thought they wanted a Charleston loop off the Greenway.
Oh, no, they wanted to be in the loop on Walker.
The loop, the information loop.
Yes, the information loop.
Really? We're going all the way to Charleston with the Greenway?
There are plans to do that, right?
I know.
Sometime in the future. So that'll be good. That really has nothing to do with us. But now this one, yes, I've been slowly moving from local to beyond local. Desjardins is running for new term.
Yep.
Proudly supports Trump.
Yep.
Do we proudly support Desjardins?
We?
I do.
Was that yes?
Doesn't.
He said yes in French.
Yeah.
I have a hard time with Scott Desjardins, but...
Well, the thing is, his voting record, he's like the third or fourth most conservative voting record in the House of Representatives. Yeah. It's a very conservative district.
I don't care how he votes. If he just will keep his mouth shut and not talk to me about family values, I'll be a lot happier. I get that he's a conservative. He comes from a conservative district. Fine. He lacks the moral position to lecture me or anybody else in the district about anything.
I've never found him to lecture much at all. Yeah. He votes. He's got to vote on issues. And when he votes, he generally will issue a statement, but I've not found him to be a lecturing personality. He's actually rather quiet.
Well, maybe for some reason you don't get his campaign literature. I do.
Well, I get his campaign. Are you saying that he doesn't have a right to speak?
I didn't say he didn't have a right to speak. I just said I don't have much time to pay attention to what hypocrites have to say about morals.
You mean like Menendez in the Senate, who's apparently taking bribes?
I'm sorry, look, when did I quote Senator Menendez?
No, but my point is, Franklin, Scott Desjardins' problems were years ago, decades ago. And apparently, you're not very forgiving, I guess.
I'm totally forgiving, except when people decide that they have the ability to be critical of everybody else's behavior.
Well, maybe
morals.
he learned from his behavior, and that actually gives him better insight.
He should have learned some humility from his behavior then.
Well, he's in a position where he has to vote on the issues, and he has to actually make ethical decisions on the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I was a little upset at a Walk for Life a few years ago when they mentioned Kevin Brooks was there, and I can't remember who else, but they had both sponsored the Walk for Life, and they said, and also Scott Desjardins here, and only one of them volunteered himself to go up and start talking about things. That kind of ruffled me feathers, but so it goes. Hey, we're pushing out a little bit farther from Cleveland to Atlanta. Just wondering, do you guys thoughts on this? There's a 2-year-old boy who's been suffering from kidney disease since birth. And he have you heard the story? Yes. He had a transplant lined up. His dad was going to donate his kidney.
His dad's a pretty long rap sheet, and he's in the probation program in Georgia.
Yeah, and he violated the terms of his probation, which pushed back. He'll have to wait a few more months for the transplant.
The hospital had him slated, and they said if probation could deliver him to the hospital, they would draw the blood and they would do the test. Well, then nobody really knows exactly what transpired, but a day or two later, the hospital said that they couldn't allow him to do the transplant until he got his probation issues straightened out. And so, of course, the mother, and I think rightly so, is saying you are punishing a 2-year-old child for the sins of the father.
Something tells me cooler heads will ultimately prevail in the light of public exposure. I hope so.
I hope so. I mean, look, I'm the right-wing conservative, and I'm pretty much for locking them up more than we do. But having said that, this little boy is an innocent. And if this father can do one decent thing in this little boy's life to help him, we should allow that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's tough. The kid had a stroke recently, last month.
Well, look, this is going to be labeled unforgiving, but who thinks this dad's going to be a great influence in this child's life, over the course of his life? I kind of doubt it. The odds aren't good. So if he can give him a kidney to give the little boy a chance, I can't imagine why government or a hospital would stand in the way.
And who's to say that this won't be the start of being an actual father, right? He realizes, this is what being a dad is loving your kid and putting his interest in front of your own. Yeah, that's a big deal for to be willing to give a kidney. Although sometimes it's easier to give a kidney than your time.
Well, and he's the match. He's the best match for the little boy.
Sure.
Yep, Sir Doodles.
But I tend to agree with Franklin. Two things. It either sounds like someone has made a ridiculously stupid decision and will quickly backtrack, or there's something we're not being told. I don't know. But either way, everything ought to be being done to get that kidney to the little boy.
Yeah. And I hesitate to bring up this next topic because we're getting close to break. There's a certain word in this that might get us all riled up, and it's Trump. Usually you say that word and explosions start to occur. But a federal judge largely blocked the Trump administration from implementing the latest version of the president's travel ban. Is supposed to go into effect this morning, barring travelers from Syria, Libya, Iran, Yemen, Chad, Somalia, North Korea, Venezuela. Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, actually, I think the judge's order is a racist order, because the judge actually allows the implementation against North Korea and Venezuela, but excludes the majority Muslim countries. For me, that's an obvious explanation that the judge himself is a racist. I mean, think about that. He actually barred it based on well, actually, it's not. That's always wrong, too. It's not racism, because Islam is not a race. There are Asian Muslims, there are Arab Muslims, there are black Muslims, there are white Muslims. It's not a race. But my point is, he is discriminating in his own order based on religion.
Franklin?
Well, number one, I don't know if the order is going to be constitutional or not. I think this one is closer to being constitutional than the previous ones were. I'm not sure I understand John's statement there. It seems to me that's just the opposite of it. What he's saying is that the order is primarily based upon religion, and therefore it's unconstitutional. That's the reason why North Korea and Venezuela would be permissible to have a ban, because that's not based upon
So, in other words,
that would be the argument.
Yes, but Franklin, that is my point.
That's
so
the
he's
opposite
saying
of
that
what you
if the
said,
country is a Muslim majority country, then the order is prejudice. But if it's not a Muslim majority country, the order is not prejudice. But that's actually the Trump administration's argument, is the order has nothing to do with the Islam or non-Islam of a country. It has to do with their criminal and terrorism activity.
As I said, John, this order certainly appeared to be closer to what the Constitution would require than the previous couple of ones had been.
But you do understand that the original legal argument by these liberal activist judges was that the order itself, when read on the face, did not seem to be illegal. But when you consider Trump's previous campaign comments about Muslims, that's what triggered it. Well, the problem with that is it either is or it isn't. You can't, in this judge's order, he actually bifurcates it and says, well, yes, it is prejudice against these countries, but it's not prejudice against those. But that's actually supports the president's original contention that it's not about race, it's not about religion, it's about terrorism.
All righty. We got a caller. Let's see if they're there. Caller, you're live.
Yes. I wanted to ask Coach Shriver about how the wrestling team going to do this year.
Coach Shriver is on tomorrow morning. You call him between 7 and 8.
Now, honey, I'm going now.
Well, I think the wrestling team is going to do great, and they're going to win the world championship. Thank you for your call. All right, we are going to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Is it time for a new ride? At Buy Here, Pay Here USA, for just $500 today, you can drive it away. Come by any of our 4 locations in Chattanooga, Cleveland, Dayton, and Dalton, Georgia, and find your new ride. For just $500 down, you can drive it away today. Remember, all our vehicles have passed a 200-point inspection and come with a 6-month, 6,000-mile warranty. And you get a free Carfax report and appraisal on your vehicle. Visit us at BuyHerePayHereUSA.com. Offer subject to credit approval. See store for details. We are Buy Here, Pay Here USA.
Yeah, you looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center. Or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
If you need a little green, Lending Frog is making deals. He'll lend you cash on any kind of wheels. Borrow just a little, or you can borrow big. Lending Frog is a new financial gig. It's hip to hop in your cash. LendingFrog.com is making a splash. Dig it, dig it. Dig it, dig it.
We're here at the Trane Heating and Air Conditioning Testing Facility to see how unstoppable their products really are.
Inside this climate chamber, it's raining incredibly hard on this Trane ECU unit. Clearly, it's hard to stop the train.
Ready for a heating and air unit that's been tested in the harshest environments possible? Stop thinking about the other guys and get a Trane. Call Mechanical Systems today to get your home on the road to comfort. 336-5739.
Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Matthews Pool and Spa Company, located in Cleveland, Bradley County for over 45 years. You know them. They're your new swimming pool construction and supply company in Cleveland, Tennessee, now with 4 generations of Matthews to serve you. Matthews Pool and Spa Company, for over 45 years, your swimming pool construction and supply company, spa or hot tub installation and maintenance. Get all of your supplies for your pool or spa right now. And that's the new location in the old Quinn Electric Company building behind KFC at 2724 Keith Street in Cleveland. Call Matthews now, 476-4521. You better get your order in now for your new pool construction for this spring and summer. 476-4521. Matthews Pool and Spa Company. Gonna jump in. Woo!
After 135 years, Hardwick Clothes, America's oldest since 1880, has delivered on our commitment to produce the finest navy blazer in America. This limited edition blazer was announced as the style winner in Garden & Guns Made in the South Awards. Crafted in Cleveland, Tennessee, we use premium Italian wool from the Tale Barbaris, custom Bimberg lining, and signature gold buttons. It's available through the finest men's stores or at hardwick.com.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
We are back, 614-5553. We're going to start off with opioids after having General Crump in last week. What is going on with opioids? What bearing does this have on us at this moment?
Well, 60 Minutes ran a story Sunday about a
whistleblower.
Well, yeah, about a change in the law that occurred a few years ago that made it harder for the Department of Justice to prosecute distributors of opioid medications. They're under a legal requirement to notify the Justice Department if people are purchasing unusual amounts of opioids. And when I say people, I don't mean actual people. I mean pharmacy chains or doctor's offices, something that's, and so they had cases where, a doctor's office in a town that had 10,000 people in it were purchasing, 1 million opioid pills a quarter, essentially like a pill mill coming in there. And there were these distributors who were doing them, and they had been prosecuted. And a law was passed that made it harder to do that. That's the thrust of it. And the way that bears on us locally, at least, is one of the primary movers of the bill, and there were Democrats and Republicans involved. And so it's about, there's plenty of bipartisan criticism here, but one of the folks who was featured as being prominently involved in that was Congressman Marsha Blackburn here, who's announced she's going to run for, I guess, Bob Corker's seat when it comes open. So I'm curious how, if at all, John thinks that affects her electoral prospects, given the attention this issue's getting these days.
Well, you know, one of the things that I talk about a lot is with the news media and all, it's sometimes not what's said, it's how it's said. What Franklin just said is correct, but if you notice, one of the ways he characterized this is the bill made it harder for them to prosecute these people. The bill did, but that was not what the bill was intended to do. The bill was actually intended to make sure that people who suffer with chronic pain had access to appropriate pain medication. Now, it may turn out that and I argue against the government doing a lot because of this, unintended consequences. One of the unintended consequences was it did make it harder. Now, of course, there's another thing to this. The 60 Minutes report was based on the testimony of one former DEA agent who was actually under an ethics review when he resigned from the DEA. I don't know what he did or didn't do.
Well, the ethics review was that Congressman Blackburn and another Congressman Marino, the primary authors of the bill, asked...
She was not a primary author. She was one of 14 co-sponsors.
That the ethics department investigate him because he had been critical of Congressman for supporting the bill.
He had threatened them, actually.
Well, I saw the testimony. It wasn't much of a threat.
He had, and
she said she was offended that he had suggested in testimony that they were supporting criminals by their support of this bill.
Well, I agree. I think that is offensive. And my point, though, is, Franklin, if he did nothing wrong and he's under an investigation and ethics review, then he would have been cleared. He didn't have to resign. So my only point is it's the word of one guy, and their intention with the bill was to make sure that patients... Now, look, I don't... Here's my bigger problem with all of this. This, again, is boiled down to is a 20, 30, 40-year push to separate people from personal responsibility. Now, one of the problems with this whole issue is basically the DEA decided that they couldn't really be that effective in going after the patients or going after the pill mills, so they were trying to go after the distributors. And I understand that. But it's still... The bigger problem for us as a culture is we don't accept personal responsibility for our actions. People are destroying their lives with these things. They've been around for decades, and they've not always been this problem.
Yeah, well, except that skips over the fact that, as General Crump agreed last week, a lot of these folks have become addicted to these with the assistance of professionals.
I don't disagree.
Well,
but the doctors need personal responsibility for their actions as well.
And so do the Congress people.
And in Tennessee, General Crump pointed out, one of the problems was the state legislature tied the hands of the doctors by saying you have to prescribe this to these people. Now, I don't think that the state legislators that did that were intending to facilitate drug abuse. I think they did something that they thought was okay on the one hand, and it had unintended consequences. I think this bill the same way. I think it had unintended consequences.
And my original question was, how do you think it affects her electoral prospects, if at all? That was my question. I didn't criticize her. I just said, what is
issue.
Do you think it's a legitimate issue?
I think it's a legitimate issue. I think that laws and their effects are always legitimate issues. I think that she will have to explain either A, what the original intent of it was, which I think the original intent was to try to make sure people had access and didn't suffer. But B, just like I criticized the fact that we have an alarm in the courthouse, but it wasn't monitored, somebody should have thought about that. Somebody should have looked at what are the consequences of these decisions. So I think she'll have to answer for that. The biggest problem that it'll be for her is if former Congressman Fincher gets in the race, because he's already indicated that he will probably talk about this, and he has probably just as conservative a voting record as Congressman Blackburn does, and so he could probably get some ground off of this. And right now he hasn't decided whether he's in the race or not.
What do you think about the announcement that former Governor Bredesen may be interested in the race?
I don't understand.
Do you think that makes it a competitive race?
I think Bredesen is probably one of the only competitive Democrats in the state.
You think it would be an interesting race then?
I think it would be an interesting race. I think the problem with Bredesen is, for you all, he doesn't fit the current mold of the Democratic Party. I think the left, if he gets in, the left will go right straight back. And keep in mind, this is a Democrat who kicked hundreds of thousands of people off of their government-sponsored health care. That has not been forgotten by the left. And so I think that'll be interesting to see what the left does. Now, from our standpoint, he's a more conservative Democrat, so it probably makes him more palatable in the state of Tennessee. Now, I don't know why he announced a month or so ago that he was not interested in the race, and now he's come back and said, well, maybe I am.
I think most people who look at the state would say that for a Democrat to win a state race right now, they likely have to come out of the Nashville area. Would you agree with that?
I think he's the only Democrat that has a chance, probably.
Well, I would argue that any Democrat who's very popular in Nashville has a chance, because if they can win by even a small margin in Middle Tennessee, they have a good chance of winning a significant victory in West Tennessee, and then to offset what would expect to be a large loss in East Tennessee.
Actually, I don't think so, because the West Tennessee has demographically changed a lot. They have a chance to win Memphis, Tennessee, and how many votes you can pour out of Memphis, Tennessee certainly makes a difference. But 20 years ago, when that dynamic was that a Republican had to come over the mountain at Monteagle with 100,000 votes, that dynamic was based on West Tennessee rural Democrats. Mm-hmm. Well, the rural people in West Tennessee are not Democrats anymore. They're mostly Republicans, or certainly conservative independents.
But the question is, where are the voters in every area? And so,
well, you've got 1 million voters you've got 1 million people in Memphis. Not all of them are registered, and what your turnout in Memphis would be,
that's
I don't know.
No question.
And the other problem is the only other popular Democrats in Nashville would probably be Dean, and he's a liberal, and he's not going to sell. Bredesen's not as liberal. He actually governed moderately.
Well, we've got a couple new things coming out of the FBI. We've got some documentation regarding the tarmac meeting with Clinton and Lynch, and Russian collusion.
Russian collusion with the Clintons, not Russian collusion with the current president. Well, the tarmac meeting is, all of this is bothersome from a Freedom of Information Act position. They certified, because Judicial Watch had put in a request for documentation on the tarmac meeting. They certified that no documents relative to that existed. Then in another unrelated case, Judicial Watch came across some references to communications between the FBI and the Justice Department and actually found the documents. And then the FBI came back and said, oh, well, yeah, we did come across these documents that are responsive. Now, this is a court order. The court ordered them to turn over documents, and they certified to the court there were no documents. And now they've come back and said, well, yeah, there are some documents. But they still haven't given the documents.
When did they certify that?
It was back in the summer.
This summer?
Yes. They had no documents.
So it was the Trump FBI who did that?
Well, not actually, Frank. Hang on.
I'm just asking. That's why I wanted to know.
Well, actually, I will be honest with you. It is Sessions' Justice Department that right now is still trying to refuse to turn them over.
Okay. And what reason is he giving for that?
They haven't really said. They said that they're working on seeing if they can redact the documents or not.
So we don't know what's in the documents.
No, we don't know
We just know
yet.
that something exists.
Well, the problem is we know they said there weren't any documents, and then in an unrelated case, Judicial Watch actually found the...
I'm not supporting withholding documents by any means. I'm just pointing out that the decision to withhold them at this point is being made by officials in the Trump
Well,
administration.
here was the letter. As a result, a letter dated August 10th from the FBI stated, upon further review, we subsequently determined potentially responsive documents may exist. As a result, your Freedom of Information Act request has been reopened.
Okay.
Now, Sessions has refused to release unredacted internal talking points developed in response to the meeting. Now, the problem is Comey, look, we're going to get into this on the secondary part of this, where we're going to talk about the Russian collusion and all, but Comey's a liar. Comey has been, at this point, proven a liar. We now know more documentation has come out, more internal memos that show original letters exonerating Clinton were written at the end of April and 1st of May. Comey was on record in congressional testimony saying he made no decisions whatsoever until after he interviewed witnesses and interviewed Mrs. Clinton, which happened about a month and a half after he wrote these original drafts of the letters exonerating Clinton. He's a liar. The former FBI director is a proven liar at this point.
614-5553. James Comey, if you want to defend yourself.
Well, the other one is actually much worse. New documents have come out from that apparently there was a major, and this was broken before I get accused of my sources, from The Hill. The Hill is not a conservative publication at all. It is a really sort of center-left publication in D.C. But the Obama administration approved in 2010 giving Moscow control of a huge, over 20% of the American uranium. The FBI had gathered substantial evidence that Russia had an official program engaged in bribery, kickback, and extortion and money laundering inside the United States. And it included most of the uranium people in the United States that were involved in the deal. It included the Clinton Foundation, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions being transferred to the Clinton Foundation at a time when Hillary sat on a board that approved the sale of 20% of our uranium stores. And all of this was kept from the public. Not only was it kept from the public, but the House Intelligence Chair, Mike Rogers, claimed that no one ever mentioned this to him, despite the concerns that were already there about the Uranium One deal on Capitol Hill. So the Obama administration kept all of this under wraps.
Well, that may prove to be true. It's also true that at the same time, the Obama administration was withholding the information about Russian involvement in the election in favor of the Trump administration. In short, the conclusion that you would draw from that is they were making an effort, rightfully or wrongfully, to not wade into that.
This actually happened in 2010 and 11. This happened while the deal was going down. They compromised national security to protect the Clintons and allowed 20% of our uranium stores to be under control of basically the Kremlin. And then they covered it up for years after the fact. And on top of that, Franklin, what they were keeping out of the news during the election was the fact that the Russians were trying to meddle. But they have never, there has been no evidence come forward that there was any, in fact, collusion with the Trump administration or with the Trump campaign. This is actual collusion. Let me read it to you. The Russians were compromising the United States. Now, this is according to the source from The Hill. Russians were compromising American contractors in the nuclear industry with kickbacks and extortion threats, all of which raised legitimate national security concerns. The merger lasted through 2013, and during that time, donations from the charitable foundation of Uranium One's chairman donated $2.35 million to the Clinton Foundation. Former President Bill Clinton also got $500,000 for a speech he gave in Moscow shortly after they announced the plans for them to get the 20%, and he was paid by a Russian investment bank with links to the Kremlin that was promoting the Uranium One stocks.
Well,
now,
I'm all for investigating that, John.
The chairman of Uranium One was sentenced to 48 months in prison, fined more than $2.1 million in late 2015, but the Justice Department's release on the court case totally omitted any evidence about Russian nuclear officials, this is a quote, Russian nuclear officials trying to integrate themselves with the Clintons. So the data on his actual conviction was scrubbed of any reference to the Clintons. So you want to know where Russian collusion has actually been proven? It's been proven with the Clintons.
Well, as I said, I'm all for it.
After 135 years.
I'm sure you'll join me, right?
Well, I will, but the problem is the Democrats on the Russian collusion investigation
Who's
committee
in charge of the Justice Department, John?
Have been quite quiet about it.
Who's in charge of the Justice Department, John?
Well, but
what's stopping them from investigating
they are,
it?
I hope they are. But the problem is, Franklin, there are congressional investigations as well. And the Democrats so far have not even issued a statement on this new information.
Okay.
Now, they're still going on the TV shows and claiming that there was collusion with the Trump campaign, even though no evidence has come forward. Matter of fact, most of the stories the press has reported have turned out to actually be false at this point. But yet, here we have stories where apparently we actually know some evidence exists, and the Democrats are quiet as crickets on it.
Okay. I support fully investigating all aspects of Russian influence in our government.
Well, speaking of investigation, they'll be doing some investigation right now, although they don't have to do much. Bergdahl has pled guilty to deserting America, but he is afraid he's not going to get a fair trial. A couple questions. What does a fair trial look like in this instance, and does he deserve it, and will he get it?
It's a military jury.
He's not going to. I don't understand.
I get maybe that's what he's talking
guilty,
about.
He's not really having a trial.
I thought what he said was part of his motivation in pleading guilty was that he didn't think he was going to get a fair trial.
So go ahead.
That's the way I understood what he said. Be that as it may, it appears to me the system has worked the way it's supposed to work.
I agree, but here's the problem. You can't say I'm not going to get a fair trial if you plead guilty because you're still under the trial system. You're now going to be sentenced for your crime by the same system that you're supposedly claiming you couldn't get a fair shake from. You know, the problem, what's going on here is just like, Franklin understands this in the legal system. He's trying to take things off the table for his sentencing is what he did.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, because to be honest, some of the charges he was charged with, he could have been executed for.
So almost cutting himself a plea deal of some
It's
sort.
a plea deal. That's what he did. Now, the plea deal that he's got, though, it varies from what I understand, around 5 years to life. So it's a pretty broad.
The judge will have a substantial amount of discretion to determine what sentence should be applied.
And I don't know if they're going to allow family. There were 6 people that were either killed or injured trying to rescue him, looking for him.
Well, it's not a civilian court, so civilians don't have a right to show up and testify if they want to, like you would here.
Sure.
That may be something that
Would
the
the Army
government
personnel that were affected?
it can be presented through testimony on behalf of the prosecutors in the military who, it works like a regular trial in that sense. You have prosecutors and you have defense lawyers and so forth. But the rules are violating the Code of Military Justice, and that you don't get to do victim impact statements by law like you do in civil ones.
Well, northern Syrian city of Raqqa has been captured, taken from ISIS. What does this mean for, I guess you could say, the war on terror as a whole? What's it mean for ISIS?
It's not over. It's a victory.
It means ISIS doesn't have a capital city.
And that was their main planning hub. And when we say planning hub, I mean for operations all around the world.
So that doesn't mean that there aren't ISIS terrorists out there, but it does mean that they don't have a centralized base from which to launch their operations.
And it was a devastating, there were stories for the last 2 or 3 weeks about droves of ISIS soldiers surrendering, and the stories were they had soiled themselves. Now, I don't know what the point, that was actually in the reporting. So whether they put that in there as a humiliation towards ISIS, but it certainly was a story of a lot of the will of these fighters had been broken.
So we know it's not killing ISIS altogether. Will this just make them harder to track?
It'll decrease their effectiveness because they, like Franklin said, they don't have a base to work from as well.
They're not collecting tax revenue and oil revenue like they were, so it affects their financing.
But now we're going to have a fight over the oil.
And that's probably a bigger issue going on, the dispute between the Kurds, the Iraqis.
The Iraqis want the Kurds to turn it back over, and they have apparently turned some of it over. There was some sporadic fighting that happened this week, but the problem for the Kurds is the Kurds are looking at it going, we've been in here for 3 years. We've been defending this for 3 years. We kind of think maybe we ought to have a little benefit out of it now. But of course, Turkey, who just came to the White House recently, they're concerned because they have a substantial Kurdish minority in the southern part of Turkey. They're concerned that if the Kurds split off from Iraq, that the Turkish Kurds will then say, well, we want to be part of this new nation. So it's difficult.
A real problem. Our relations with Turkey and Pakistan are really in a dicey position right now. While we frequently disagree with those folks, they have been very important allies to us over the years. And so this area of foreign policy right now is something that we all ought to be paying attention to.
Well, and actually the Trump administration has done a pretty good job with reining Pakistan back in a little bit. This rescue of this family was actually an ultimatum type situation from what I understand.
The leading general in Afghanistan right now issued a fairly long statement about his battle plan moving forward and said none of the plans will succeed unless Pakistan closes its border to being a refugee to Taliban folks who flee across the border, which has been a persistent issue for 15 years now. So he said, we can succeed, we will succeed, unless this doesn't happen.
Well, see,
we won't succeed.
The family of rescue was captured in Pakistan, or in Afghanistan, but they had crossed the border, just like Franklin was saying, into Pakistan. And from what I understand, the Trump administration more or less told Pakistan, look, you've either got to help us here or we're done.
What's happened for 15 years is we've launched military incursions into the more remote areas of Afghanistan.
They flood.
Succeeded largely militarily, but when they would escape across the border into Pakistan and stay there.
And we couldn't
follow them, and so that would be a problem.
So the rescue of that family is encouraging that the Trump administration seems to have gotten a little bit more cooperation out of Pakistan on that issue. But the Kurds are good people, and they've been fighting for freedom for a long time. We've abandoned them on multiple cases, and they've still stuck with us. But it creates problems in Iraq. It creates problems in Turkey. It's a very complicated position. One last thing I want to throw out, and Franklin can comment on this. There's a governor's race in Virginia. The Democrat, Ralph Northam, he has a running mate. The running mate is the only statewide elected black man, black elected statewide official in Virginia. There's a pipeline that some of them want to build. There's a union in Northern Virginia that supports the pipeline. His running mate is opposed to the pipeline. Northam has had his running mate's info removed from push cards that the union was helping them hand out in Northern Virginia. So my question is, if a Republican had had his black running mate's info and picture removed from campaign material so as not to, offend a political group, how quickly would everybody be calling him a racist and demanding that he resign from the race?
Well, I don't know how quickly. I do know what prompted that action. A blatantly racist series of ads run by the Republican candidate in the race is what prompted that bad decision that the Democrat made if he did that.
A blatantly racist ad.
He's running a series of ads all over Virginia. He spent about $6 million on television ads saying that the Democratic candidate was promoting the rise of MS-13, a gang in Virginia cities.
How is that racist in any way? What does that have to do with racism?
Well, MS-13's not really a Caucasian gang.
But Franklin, that has, once again, that's the same thing as the case we just talked about with the judge in Hawaii on the travel ban.
Here's the problem. There is
MS-13 is a problem. I don't care whether they're white or black or Hispanic or what.
There is no MS-13 problem in Virginia.
Okay.
It's a cooked-up issue that has no purpose.
Has nothing. Well, that's a fine way to refute the ad, but it has nothing to do with racism. Once again, you all are diluting the actual. Your candidate was racist by removing his black running mate from his literature.
I just said that was a terrible decision.
That is racism.
That was a terrible decision.
That's actual racism.
Before we go, there is this article I found that says key senators reach healthcare subsidy deal. Trump expresses support. But I just had one question because there's a word on here that I believe is from antiquity that I feel like I maybe learned it at school at some point, but I've not seen it in so long. I'm not sure what it means. It says key senators reach some kind of healthcare subsidy deal. What is that word?
Bipartisan?
Senator Lamar
bipartisan?
Alexander and Patty Murray.
Bipartisan. For your homework.
But it's a patch that continues a government prop up corporate welfare, which I thought Franklin was against, for the insurance companies. That's all it is, corporate welfare.
Well, and if anyone wants to research the word bipartisan.
2 cheers to them for trying to reach across the aisle.
And the only way you could get Democrat participation was corporate welfare.
And with that, we are done. Fare thee well, Backfire listeners.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music.